30 Odd Minutes is sponsored in part by Digital Dowsing. Who are you powered by?
For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard. We will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Oh man.
Wow. Another good one.
Oh man.
Wow.
Where'd we end up?
Well, it's a scary old house, I believe, in Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
You can tell by the lack of foliage on the trees. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. It's great to have you oddballs with us. I'm Jeff Belanger, my domestic life partner, Andrew Lake. It's good to be here. Matt, engine room, damage report. What's going on?
Looks like we lost the center console.
That can't be good. What are we going to do?
Looks like we're going to actually have to abduct the guest tonight.
Huh. We haven't done that in a while.
No, but it can be done.
We can
pull it off.
We've done this before.
Yeah.
This will be good.
It's not skin off our nose.
No, it's always, I like the look on their face. When
Yeah.
It's always a classic. How have you been?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Made a visit to one of my favorite legend tripping spots yesterday, Anawan Rock.
Nice. Anything cool happen?
Yeah, I helped out a TV crew with a few people from England.
Oh, name dropping, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, that's a great place. I know you've captured EVP there. It's a great legend. They're in Rhode Island, which is relative because we're going to be bouncing around Rhode Island tonight in this mission. Are you ready for that?
It's a very small place to bounce around in.
No, I know. And I know you'll have lots to add, being Greenville Paranormal and all that.
I'll try.
All right. Ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Our childhood is filled with stories, legends, and scares that help shape our adult lives. Sometimes they're just stories, but sometimes they're not. In tonight's mission, we're going to explore the haunted childhood of a Woonsocket, Rhode Island native who went on to become a United States Marine. So you know this guy doesn't scare easily.
No.
All right, after seeing the world as a Marine, our guest returned to New England to start his life and the charitable foundation Haunt for Hunger. Here to discuss some Rhode Island legends from his childhood and his book, Big Todd, The House of Eyes, and Growing Up Scared in New England, please welcome our abducted prisoner, Mike Bouley, beaming in. Let's see if we can get him. Come on, where is he? Does it work? Hey, I think we got him. Mike.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good thing I wasn't in the bathroom.
I know. Welcome. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes.
Thank you.
This is the mothership.
Welcome aboard.
Hi, guys.
This is your first time on a spaceship?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, people are often surprised and
You're right, the first look is always precious.
it's great.
It's pretty roomy.
Yeah. No, there's parts we haven't even seen yet. But it's got its problems, for sure. It breaks a lot. But it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Woonsocket, Rhode Island, growing up there as a kid. What scared you, young Marine, before you were a Marine?
Well, yeah, you know, you're not born a Marine. Well, some people are, I suppose. But, you know, I think growing up for me in Woonsocket in northern Rhode Island was really, for the way that my life turned out, was really a blessing. Where else could you have all this great legends and urban legends and haunted places and history and all that just wrapped into one little place. So I was very happy to grow up here. I wasn't happy at the time, but I'm kind of glad that all the things happened to me as they did.
So talk about your childhood. What's this moment where you start to realize, okay, there's some scary stuff out there that's not just schoolyard bullies and things like that?
Right. Well, I mean, actually, one of the first memories that I had was kind of the schoolyard bully, and I talk a little bit about it in my book, and that's when I was talking about the bridge.
Right.
And the bridge is actually an existing pedestrian bridge that I had to pass every day when I was in junior high. So that was it was a bridge from my world to the other world, and my world being Catholic schools, to the public school world.
Okay.
So, you know, that was obviously one of the first us versus them moments for me.
I think we have a picture of that bridge somewhere in there. It's this Woonsocket pedestrian bridge. We don't have a picture of the bridge.
You know what? Maybe it was blown up. And as a matter of fact, maybe I did it.
We land and sometimes all the kinds of things go wrong. But it's a footbridge that you said connected. And what's the story behind it? What scared you?
Basically, when you grow up in a private school, you're automatically scared of a lot of things. You're scared of your teachers, and for me, I had nuns as teachers too when I was little. Which is, you know, they're scary people. I had one that used to arm wrestle me, and she beat all the boys at arm wrestling. So
right,
and her name was Sister Henry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so growing up in a private school, your arch enemy is the public school kid because you don't know any.
Sure.
You know, they're just kind of this otherworldly being, that they're violent, and they're out to get you. And I think that's the kind of the culture that's formed in private schools, especially, well, in my private school. So whenever you would encounter a public school kid, you were really not sure what they were going to do, if they were going to just hit you because you were a private school kid, or you heard stories about kids that were getting beat up and
Right.
stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the early memories that I have of just being afraid to walk down the street, because that's really, I didn't grow up in Baghdad. I grew up in suburbia, really,
Sure.
in a nice neighborhood, and but wherever you grow up, you kind of invent these things to be scared of. I think everybody does.
Sure, yeah. Folklorists call it ostension, or we call it legend tripping. The idea, it's rite of passage stuff too, where whether you're making up stories or you heard them somewhere that, hey, that graveyard's haunted, or that an old witch lived in that house, and if you knock
Right.
on the door,
Right.
and you're daring each other, right? Rite
Sure.
of passage. You're saying, are you brave enough to go up to that door alone that and your rational mind starts saying, well, there's no witches.
Well,
Or are there?
where I grew up in Greenville, there was an old lady I was always warned, never cut across her property because she'll put rock salt and bacon rind in your butt with her shotgun. And supposedly it did happen a few times while that woman was alive. So, yeah, nobody would dare cut across that property.
So really, in the crux of it, there was probably a little bit of truth at the core of all of these stories. And
Always.
And a lot of the stories I talk about specifically in my book have a little bit of truth to them. At least, if you go far back enough, you'll find some truth.
And some of the truth is there every single time. Let's talk about Hartnett Baseball Stadium. There's an announcement they make, right?
Oh, well, McCoy Stadium, yes.
McCoy Stadium, sorry.
McCoy Stadium, that's another one of my early memories. My family was a baseball family. And
Sure.
my father, big baseball fan. My brother was great at baseball, and I was mediocre at baseball. But we were a baseball family, and we used to go to the Pawtucket Red Sox all the time. I think they were, $3 to get in back in the day, and we used to smuggle McDonald's hamburgers in our armpits to get in. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
It keeps them warm.
It keeps them warm. But one of the earliest memories that I have of going to a professional baseball game was the announcement that they make at the beginning of the game, where they say, during the game, batted or thrown balls, bats, and other objects may enter the stands and cause significant injury to the spectators. And to 99.9% of the public, they don't even hear it, or they're drinking beers or eating hot dogs. They don't even listen. But to me, that could happen, really?
Right.
I don't want to be here right now. So there was one little section of the stadium that was right behind home plate that was protected by a net.
Sure.
And so those seats, I wanted to get those seats there. Let's get there early. And they thought, oh, he wants to get there so he can see the game. No, I just don't want to get hit in the head with a bat. So that was basically one of the...
I need the net.
I need the net. The net was my friend. So if we couldn't sit in the net area, it was all downhill from there.
And being Catholic, too, I remember I was raised Catholic as well, and I remember being in a car with my family and saying, is God really everywhere? And they said, yeah. I said, is God in this car right now? And they said, yeah. And I was scared out of my mind. my parents had to ask God to leave the car for a minute, because I was petrified that this omnipotent, omniscient, all powerful thing was sitting next to me and I can't see him. And you're right, we're so impressionable as kids. And the stories that you're exposed to growing up in New England, we've talked about this kind of stuff. We are exposed to certain stories and legends that are great fun. Yeah. And I talk about them with my daughter. We talk about cemeteries potentially being haunted and things like that. God knows what kind of adult I'm going to create, with this. But it's one of those, even the games we play. Ouija boards, right? Ages 8 and up. It says
Ouija
very
boards.
clearly, 8 and up. Right on the cover.
Yeah,
you have a Ouija board story.
I do have a Ouija. Well, I think a lot of people in one of the chapters of my book discusses the Ouija board and some of the experimentation that I did with it, along with some of my friends. And I think the Ouija board is kind of analogous to maybe drug use or smoking or some other taboo activity that kids get involved in at a young age that they're not supposed to.
Right.
And so, the Ouija board, you can go to the store and buy it. It can't be that bad.
Right.
Like you said, 8 years and up, you can go to Toys R Us and buy
That's right.
buy a Ouija board. But we used to use the Ouija board on occasion just to kind of see, what kind of things would come out of it. And I think there's a common Ouija board experience that everybody has that's ever used one, and that's you always are sure that the other person is moving it,
Sure.
and that person is equally sure that you are.
Right.
And so somewhere in the middle, you're both moving it, or something else is moving it. But in the end, maybe you really don't want to know. So I mean,
Right.
Using the Ouija board became kind of a fun thing that we would do, and then just all out of the blue, we would ask it some questions about. Some things like, how much change would somebody have in their pocket that's not even in the room? And it would tell you, and it would be right. And, to the exact penny. And right about that time, we said, no, I don't want to play with this anymore. This is real. This is not something to be fooled around with. And, I don't know if it was being moved subconsciously. I'm not an expert on that subject. And you guys probably have heard a lot of people talk about Ouija boards. But there's something to it. and it's just something that, it's better just leave it alone.
What would the nuns have thought?
That's another thing. Just growing up in a Catholic school, that kind of subject, you just didn't talk about it. And, interested in ghosts and things like that, as I was at a young age, you're one of those weird kids. And you go to the library, and those books about, ghosts and hauntings and demonology and things, you have to have a special card to get those. Or behind a locked door, and you're not going to get it today. So, it's another one of those taboo areas that you just don't want to, be caught looking into.
Sure. No, I got it. So, here's the thing. Things are going awesome here.
I think I broke the ship.
We're getting messages that everything's broken, but we're glad you're with us. And if you're watching the show live at 30oddminutes.com, jump in our chat room. You can ask questions, and we will figure out how to get them up here to our guests. But at the same time, so you're right, though. But Ouija boards also have a story behind them.
Yes.
And it's not just a board game. It's not just Monopoly or Othello.
Right.
It's got 124 years of history.
Yeah.
125 next year.
Sure.
It's so we've got and that's part of everything we're talking about here, right? So it's not just that. So public toilets. That's something that I know. I get stage fright, and we know the rules, right? If you see a guy next to a urinal, you got to go 2 or 3 away.
Having stage fright would be a blessing to me, because that's not what I had. So basically, the reason that my whole book came about was because of a public toilet, or actually a lack thereof. So the first story that I wrote down.
Didn't George Michael say the same thing?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's the same story.
I wasn't in that part that day, no matter
Different.
what he says.
Totally different. Go on.
But in any case, so the first story that I wrote down and then I kind of shared with people, and they said, hey, you should write a book, was about, I was on a trip to Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire, and this was in middle school. And unfortunately, I was experiencing some gastrointestinal distress that day.
Right.
It was a long bus ride. Anybody who's ever been on a bus ride to New Hampshire knows that you hit a lot of bumps. Well, one of those bumps was an unfortunate bump, and I just kind of let go.
Yeah.
And made a mess of myself. So for the rest of the day, I had to go explaining to people that I was hiking the mountain with that this was a trail that's used by horses, and so a lot of times they would just kind of go along the trail, and that's why it smells like that, not because of me. I didn't do anything.
Right. No, they would dissipate after a while.
And that was a kind of a really long and detailed story that I had remembered, and I wrote down. And so to this day, public toilets is one of those things where nobody really likes to use them. Sometimes you really have to. And I developed a set of rules, and I think a lot of people have those kind of rules where it has to be a certain setup, or I'm not going in there. Or if it just you look inside and it looks shady, I ain't going in there. So there needs to be it needs to be set up just right. I don't know if you guys. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, but
I have to have a rope ladder already out the window.
Right, of course.
You don't want to face the people that you just no.
And I'm already worried about Bloody Mary in the mirror. So there's that.
Exactly, yeah.
She's waiting in any bathroom.
Yeah, you're washing your hands as fast as you can to get out of there.
I always wonder why Bloody Mary could find you, no matter what bathroom you were in. And she has to be in a lot of places at the same time.
She looks like me. That's what I've figured out every time I've looked in a mirror.
Apparently, all mirrors are connected, I guess.
Yeah.
Inside.
Yeah.
Which is, and these are the things we test as kids, and so, engine room. We got nothing, right?
No, just hold on.
This is great.
That's what happens when you come to Woonsocket.
Wait. Oh. So you had that can't be real. Come on.
That's a picture. That's a real picture that I took when I was a child. No, that is a gross overestimation of one of my childhood fears, and that was in 1977. A lot of people know that the Jaws movie came out, and everybody knows the Jaws movie, and everyone was afraid to go to the beach.
Right.
When Jaws came out, I saw it probably 1982. It had been on VHS for a while. I was still a young lad, but I transferred the fear of sharks to every body of water, no matter if it was a pool or any type of body of water, lake. I was sure that Jaws was in there waiting just for me, and it didn't help that I saw other kids flailing around the water and stuff. I was sure that he was just waiting for me to go in there, so I had this irrational fear that there was a shark, and no matter what, chlorinated or not, salt water or not. So it took a lot of courage for me to get into the water. And it sounds stupid, and it's an irrational fear as you get older, obviously. But it's one of those things that you have to deal with it, and you have to be able to overcome that fear and move on with your life.
All right. Well, I totally get it. So did you become a U.S. Marine to overcompensate for all these irrational childhood fears?
No, but that's a good question. No, I didn't. But, it's funny that you asked, because I think a lot of the things that I went through as a young person, I kind of was able to confront a lot of the fears that I had and overcome them And then it served me well later on in life, and it serves me well to this day. I mean, there's a lot of things that scare people, but it's all in the way that you move past it. You adapt and you overcome, and that's really one of the models of the Marine Corps. But it's also a motto that we have that everyone can use.
I just picture the drill sergeant like, really, Marine? Toilets? That's what you're worried about? We got things blowing up.
Luckily, they're probably not watching at this point.
Get in the pool. There's no shark in there.
We have much bigger concerns.
I don't think that they would really say anything to you. They would probably just throw you in.
Maybe
hit you a few times.
No, I totally get it. All right, I think we're potentially going to take a break for the news.
Okay.
Maybe. And then we'll be right back and talk about some great Rhode Island legends. Be right back after the news.
A newly released documentary claims that some unsolved deaths in a remote part of Russia were caused by a Yeti-like creature known as a mank. In February of 1959, a group of college students went on a camping trip in the Ural Mountains where they met a violent and mysterious end. When a search party later found the bodies of the 9 missing students, it appeared as if they had all fled the safety of their tent without warm clothing or any of their supplies. The campers' tent had been torn apart, and their frozen bodies were found covered by drifting snow in different spots away from the campsite. Some of the bodies had crushed skulls and broken bones, and the face of one of the women had been horribly disfigured. Because none of the students' valuable tools were taken, the makers of this documentary find it hard to believe that indigenous tribesmen could have attacked and killed the campers for unintentionally trespassing, which has been the favorite explanation for this unsolved crime. Sounds like there's a mank out there who's got some explaining to do. I'm Andrew Lake, and oddly enough, that's the news.
Thank you, Andrew. That was riveting. I don't know how you get back here so fast.
I manage to do it every week.
It's really amazing. All right, we're back. We are talking about Big Todd, the House of Eyes, and growing up scared in New England with Mike Bouley, our guest, abducted here aboard the mothership.
And happily so.
I know. It's comfortable, right? I mean,
it's not bad.
No, you hardly notice
the probes were not as bad as I thought.
Well, you got the starter ones. It gets worse. They get larger.
Right then.
Yeah, that's for after the credits. So let's talk about Rhode Island. You're a Rhode Island expert. I've been there a couple times. Elder Ballou Cemetery. This is a legend I hadn't heard before in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Tell us about this.
Well, Elder Ballou Cemetery is a very old. Yeah, there it is. Very old cemetery that's located in Cumberland, Rhode Island. It's in a secluded area. It looks like it's always in the shade, like you see in this picture here. Mm-hmm. And the most prominent feature of it, and there's a lot of old cemeteries in New England. The most prominent feature of this one is the holding vaults that you see right there.
Yep.
And those are obviously for when people were to pass away back in the day.
The keeps.
In the keeps, they couldn't bury them in the hard frozen ground, so they would keep them in the holding area until the ground thawed. Well, today you can go into these holding areas, and it's the most prominent thing that you can see when you pass Elder Ballou Cemetery. And over the years, a legend kind of grew around the cemetery, and it is supposedly haunted. A lot of people have had paranormal experiences there. But for me, and what I talked about in the book was there was an urban legend about a guy named Fingernail Freddy who lived in the vault. Mm-hmm. And the Fingernail Freddy story is a story that's been circulating through the Blackstone Valley in northern Rhode Island for the last, I found out recently, for the upwards of 70 years. I met a lady at a recent book signing who said she heard the legend when she was a kid, and she was in her 80s. So, I mean, wow. and it predates the Nightmare on Elm Street and all of that stuff. And it's a legend. It's a very familiar urban legend of a guy that had really long fingernails because he lived out in the burial keeps, and he killed people that came too close to the cemetery, and especially young lovers at night. And one person would go outside, and they would end up being cut up by Fingernail Freddy. So that's kind of evolved around this cemetery, and supposedly to this day, you can find him there. So any Friday, Saturday night, you can drive by Elder Ballou Cemetery, and you'll see people walking around the cemetery with their little flashlights, little headlamps with the LEDs on them. Yeah. I don't know what they think they're going to find. They're probably going to find another person out there looking for the same thing. But it's as you mentioned before, legend tripping. It's an activity that people get involved in. It teaches, and it's a valuable lesson. It teaches you to overcome fears. It teaches you history. If you're gonna go to a spot, you need to know why you're going to the spot, and so people do research and they find out why this place is significant, what happened here. And I think that's one of the things about Elder Ballou Cemetery is it's still unknown. A lot of people don't know why these legends started about, other than it's just creepy looking.
Sure, and a cemetery too. We've talked about in the past. A cemetery. People would say, like, why would a cemetery be haunted? You're a ghost. Sure. You can go anywhere. You can haunt this boring plot of land. But I think when you're a living person, this is my destiny. This is where I'm heading. Yeah. All of us, like this. There's bones under my feet here, and that gets your fear up a little bit.
Sure.
And you add the fear to a great legend, moonlit night. In the dark, you get pushed off alone by your friends. Have you investigated Elder Ballou?
I've been there, and I'd never had heard the story of Fingernail Freddy. All I had heard is that there was a mysterious character, like an older man, like sort of a grayish-looking figure that was seen walking along the cemetery. I wonder if that's being connected to Fingernail Freddy.
That's one of the recurring, I should say, visions there is of the gray man that's wandering around. People are saying it's a Civil War soldier, and there's a lot of old graves, and there's actually an old foundation at the apex of that hill that it used to be a small house there. So there's a lot of unknown history about it, but who knows where the legend actually came from? It could have come. Sometimes these things collide.
Sure.
And what you have is a convergence, and then all of a sudden it develops more details that weren't there before.
Of course.
So the funny thing about urban legends is who's to say how these details are even known. If you're talking about Fingernail Freddy, how did he get that way? Why did he have such long fingernails? He didn't have a fingernail clipper. Who knows? He didn't have a sharp rock. So these details are just made up and somehow adhere to the legend, and it's a moving thing.
And all you need is one weird experience by someone who goes, I heard scraping on that door
That's right.
in the middle of the night, and boom, right? You just threw a big log on the fire, and it goes on. And that's the thing. I personally believe when you're talking about some of these legends, we talked about a nugget of truth. There's always some nugget, but I actually think often there's a paranormal one. There's something weird and unexplained that happened to somebody that someone else found believable enough that they repeated the story.
Right.
Hey, my buddy Andrew, he's on the up and up. He was out there, and he heard the scraping of the fingernails. Opened the door, no one's there. I don't know.
And it also helps if he has that one friend that goes, "No, I was there, man. It happened.
Right.
I was running right behind him.
Everybody was always there.
Yeah.
If everybody was there, there would be too many people.
Yeah, we all saw it. Yeah. No, and that's what pulls it to it. Because we're asking big questions here. We're not just chasing stupid stories, right? We're asking, is there life after death? Are there monsters in the world with us?
And they're really important to people too. And you don't want to question somebody's integrity by questioning their story.
Of course.
So if somebody says, "Yeah, I saw it," you don't want to call them a liar. So and especially if the person has a good reputation, you take what they say a little bit more seriously, and that's how these things get started. So
let's talk about there's a great a Girl Scout camp, right? It's
Boy Scouts.
Oh, yeah. Boy Scouts. Sorry, Camp Ker-Anna.
Camp Ker-Anna. Actually, probably Girl Scouts too. Equal opportunity.
I've heard the story of Hot Shot Charlie, but I don't know much about him. Tell us about Hot Shot Charlie, and this is also in Cumberland, right?
In Cumberland, yes. It's Camp Ker-Anna is still there to this day, founded in 1937, I believe. And Hot Shot Charlie was actually a person who lived on the property, or just north of Camp Ker-Anna. And the story, as the story goes, and I found this out as a camper when I was 8 or 9 years old, when you're scared of everything. Well, I was. And it was a story of a man who lived in the woods, had some cornfields, and the kids used to mess with his cornfields. So one day, he, much like you were discussing earlier, somebody came, Hot Shot Charlie, his name was Charlie, came out of his house with a shotgun loaded with rock salt and scared the kids with it.
Right.
They came back later and lit his house on fire while he was out, and unbeknownst to the kids, there was Charlie's wife and kids were in the house. And so the story goes, he went and tried to save them, became horribly disfigured by the flames, and unfortunately the family died, and now you have a crazed lunatic who lives in the woods who's mad at kids. Great recipe for people going to sleepaway camp at 8 years old.
Yeah.
So that was the story. And it was actually a serviceable legend because it served a purpose. It kept kids out of the woods.
Yep.
And so who knows if a camp counselor started that story, 50 years ago to make sure that kids didn't go into the woods. But there is a little bit of nugget of truth to it. And if you go into the woods north of Camp Ker-Anna, there's an old foundation. I don't know if it was a burn foundation. It could have been unrelated. But it lends just enough to it to scare kids. And it's a useful legend.
And there's stories of gray ladies, white ladies, green ladies over in England often haunting castle ruins. And parents were happy to propagate these stories too because
keep the kids away from the ruins.
You can get hurt.
Sure.
You go climbing on those old rocks, you could fall, you could break your leg, you could die. So if a monster scares you away or a ghost scares you away, I'm happy to tell the tale. Yep. But do we create the reality? Do we talk about something into reality, into the point where people now know it, accept it as truth?
And it becomes like a tulpa.
Like a tulpa, like a thought form, a thing that gets brought into the world, as real. And people think that sounds so silly, but I'll give you an everyday example. The paper money in our wallet, right? It's only worth something because if we believe in it.
If you think it is.
Yeah.
Right?
You
Sure.
stop.
Yeah.
If we stop
Sure.
believing in it,
It's just a piece
it's
of
over.
paper.
It's a fragile system.
It's over. It's totally fragile.
Right.
The $20 is right now worth a 6-pack and a pizza, but
Sure.
it could falter.
Yeah.
And then what do we do? How do we get the pizza and beer?
right.
So that's what's that's belief in our everyday life. How do you think this shapes us? All of these stories, all these kids' stories.
Well, like I said, it teaches you to kind of overcome obstacles.
Yeah.
And whether the obstacle is your fear or it's a physical limitation or whatever the case may be, being encountered at a young age with adversity is really where it serves to shape you. And some of these fears remain. I mean, you'll still have people and this lady that I talked to is in her 80s. She remembered the story. And she was getting scared just talking about it.
Right.
70 years later.
As irrational as it may sound, it's still real to her. All right,
Yeah.
one more place. Let's visit Nine Men's Misery. This is a
Yes.
place I think a lot of people have heard of. Also in
Yes.
Cumberland.
Also,
Rhode
a
Island.
lot of things in Cumberland.
There it is.
Yeah, it's actually the oldest veterans memorial in the United States. It's a memorial of 9 soldiers who were killed, colonists who were killed during the King Philip's War.
No, you were correct. They were militiamen.
Oh,
yeah.
militiamen. It said
Yeah.
1675 during King Philip's War. It was a very bloody war, and in today's numbers, it had more fatalities, 7 times the Second World War.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of half of New England burned down as a result of King Philip's War. But anyway, you can go to this monument. It's open to the public. It's free. It's right behind the Cumberland Library.
Nice little walk.
It is. It's nice, and it's a solemn place because it is a veterans memorial, and I hope people take that seriously because it's something that you can't just be flippant with it. But supposedly 9 militiamen were tortured and killed by Indians as a result of, they were taken prisoner during another battle, and they were skinned alive and buried on this spot. So
Right.
the legend evolved around that, and this is a spooky place, and you don't want to go there. And it is a spooky place. I mean, but it's also spooky because 9 people lost their lives there. It's not
They were tortured.
They were tortured,
Yeah.
and so who knows what kind of resonance an event like that has.
And if you look at that picture again, I don't know if our broken mothership can bring it up. There it is. Do you see the American flag?
Yes.
They weren't American.
No, that's true. They were British. Yeah, they're British colonists.
We've adopted them.
Great
though.
point.
That's okay. No, I mean at the time, of course, 1600s.
Sure, it was 100
they
years
would-
before our
They would have
revolution.
been,
Correct, yeah. Long time ago.
They would have been, I'm sure, patriotic Brits,
Yep.
Sure.
defending their new colony.
And the sad thing is they were fighting for the king because they were promised land.
Right.
And in Rhode Island, we had a village that was given to men who fought for the king, and it was the worst section of the town who could have been given.
Right.
But hey, we've got voters' rights now, but we're living in a swamp.
There you go.
Yeah, it was the original name of Rhode Island, right? It was or Providence, right? It was,
Yeah.
Providence Plantations, yeah.
Right, plantations, yeah, right. So
Yeah.
it's and it's to me that's even the American flag is funny because someone's probably being very patriotic, like,
Sure.
hey, let's
Yeah.
remember,
Being respectful and right.
yeah, and you're like wrong flag.
Yep.
Wrong
Yep.
flag.
Yep.
Not
That's
that
true.
they wouldn't have gone on.
Should
to
be a
become-
Union Jack technically, but
Yeah.
If somebody put that there, they would have been ripped down, or somebody said, "Oh, what are these people doing?"
Yeah, no, but that's okay because we care so much about who we are and where we're from, and these stories, these are people who died for the land we live on now.
Yeah.
In a war that, like you said, that unless you're from this area, you just go a state away. People haven't heard of the King Philip's
A
War.
lot of people haven't. Yeah.
And like you said, per capita, bloodiest conflict
Yeah.
ever. And so these ghost stories, if nothing else, they help us talk about those subjects, and I'm all for that.
Yep.
And I think
I am
that's
too.
what's so great about talking about these legends and stories. Don't poo-poo them. There's a connection not just with each other, but with our past, with our ancestors, with our history.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about it. And that's what's fun about your memoir,
Yes.
which, of course, is called Big Todd, The House of Eyes, and Growing Up Scared in New England by Mike Bouley. And it's available on Amazon
Yes.
and wherever. You can get it to your website, and you
Yes.
can find that from ours. My gosh, we're out of time. I wanted to talk about Haunt for Hunger, hauntforhunger.com, nonprofit. Real quick.
Look up hauntforhunger.com. It's a charitable organization that my wife and I founded, and it's great fun. We do it every year. This is our 6th year. So if you're in the New England area, check us out.
Yeah, and that's really cool. It's not just scares and spooks. It's also raising money for a great cause. So we'll of course have links to that. And that's it. We're out of time. This mission's over. The ship's somehow held together long enough, and we can introduce you to our other long array of probes.
All right.
Right after this. All right, folks. Until next time. Stay odd.